All right. Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to Keystroke POS Live. I'm Jay Restuccia. Today we are going to cover um, uh, label editing for Eltron, Zebra, and Godex printers. This is somewhat of a continuation of last week's Keystroke POS Live, where David Hunsinger showed you all about editing label files to be printed using a desktop printer, a standard Windows printer, your typical laser printer. Whereas today, we're going to discuss label printing using dedicated label printers. Some of our more common printers, some of the printers more commonly used with Keystroke would be Eltron Zebra. Actually, I believe they're mostly all Zebra now, though Eltron are still in some installations. These tend to be good quality printers that last for years, and we still get the occasional call for the Eltron printer, which, again, very similar to Zebra. And I'm also going to include the Godex printers today, a newer line of dedicated label printers that we've designed some label forms for use with Keystroke. So today what we'll be covering shouldn't be anything too new for most of our users or most of you folks that have already been working with Eltron Zebra printers. This will really be more of just a refresher for those of you that have already worked with dedicated label printers. Before we get to that, just a few brief words on Keystroke Live. Keystroke Live is held every Wednesday, 10 a.m. Mountain Time. You can use the same login credentials. And week after week, we'll cover topical keystroke training issues. And each month, on the first of the month, Keystroke Live is hosted by Michael Gedd, president of SBS. So moving right along, we'll get right into some label editing for specialty printers. In this case, the most important distinction when we're using these specialty or dedicated label printers, invariably they use their own proprietary printer command languages. So basically, for those of you that attended last week's POS Live regarding label editing, most of that does not apply when we're using these specialty printers. It usually does require some expertise with the programming language. You'll at least need to review reference materials. We have several command references that we refer to for whichever specialty printers we happen to be working with. Similarly, we do include several default forms that with Keystroke that use proprietary languages, so these can serve as a very good template for you to expand on from there. A couple of benefits of the specialty printers really are that we have a much finer degree of control over formatting, whereas last week you saw that when we're using standard printers, just plain desktop Windows printers, we have to get into the editing of keystroke drivers and editing of WPD files, as Dave, I'm sure, referenced. When we're using these specialty printers, the trade-off is that you do have to have familiarity with the programming language, but using that language, you have a much greater degree of control over things like text and barcode placement and size and font control. So again, there's a trade-off, but using a dedicated printer is commonly going to give the user a much more desired result in the final product, that they get a label that's customized to really suit their preferences in terms of layout and sizing and so forth. And once the label has been designed, it's all completely hands-off for the user. They'll continue to use the same saved label settings. Another benefit to some of these specialty printers is that you may have access to some of their proprietary label design software that will allow you to, in a WYSIWYG environment, in a graphical environment, allow you to lay out a label, see exactly what commands are needed to produce a label in that format, and we can easily transfer that over to Keystroke. So I'd like to just jump right into to Keystroke and jump over to our label manager. Now already I'm in our label manager. Let me back up a moment here, a step here. We're going to go in our label manager to the price menu, select by item. For our purposes, last used is perfectly suitable. And as you saw last week, the output of your labels depends almost entirely upon the form assigned. Let's take a look at the forms that we include. Many of these forms are suited towards a standard Windows desktop printer, although, as I said, we have several forms that are suited to specialty printers such as an Eltron Zebra or a Godex printer. Let's take a look through some of these forms. Some of them are very self-explanatory. Some of them you may want to get on the phone with tech support and discuss what's going to be a good choice, or maybe just use a little trial and error. We're going to get down to, see here, as I get into the B's, we see we have some blaster labels. Many of you may be familiar with the barcode blaster printers. Any forms that we include with Keystroke that are suitable for a barcode blaster or cognitive solutions printer are typically going to have a blaster, the name blaster in their description. Let's get down a little further to Eltron Zebra. And we group these together. Again, these are, I believe Zebra became the owners of Eltron. We still refer to it as Eltron Zebra because they shared the same proprietary programming language. In this case, most of our standard form files use a programming language called EPL2. This is one of the things that you might want to look for when you're considering a proprietary or a dedicated label printer. What languages does it support? We know that we've got quite a few here in the EPL2 language, so we already have something of a basis for you to go by. I'm going to start with examining one of our more common Eltron Zebra label files. This is the Eltron Zebra LP Plus TLP 2.25 wide, 1.25 high. We see it as a file name of underscore EIIP1x2.tag. An important detail is that, as you can note from this list, all of the files on this list are all preceded by an underscore. The underscore denotes that this is a standard Keystroke form file. This is a form file that was included with Keystroke. Any custom files that you or your users may create cannot begin with an underscore. So easy way to tell when we're seeking out custom files. If it's got an underscore, we know we need to keep looking. So let's look at this standard form file. And again, this screen is quite similar to what David reviewed with you last week. There are quite a few differences that we'll note right away, though, is that the commands in the lower section of the screen are all quite different than what we had seen in a standard form file. Let's just take a quick comparison here. I'll go right back up to, let's see, use a for across code. Here is a standard form file. We see that we have data fields spaced differently. We see that the commands contain things like designated width and alignment and printer codes, decimal fields. These are not used in many of the proprietary form files, where in the desktop Windows printers form files, we're using Keystroke to send commands to this printer, send basically Windows commands to the printer. Using these specialty barcode printers, we are sending printer commands, the proprietary printer commands, directly to the printer. All commands are included in the field line, and all parameters are assigned in these commands. Let's just get right down. Let's break apart a couple of these commands real briefly. Here we have a label that we know is going to print some text. The first text that we're going to see in this label is simply the text Keystroke POS. Well, you'll see I have Keystroke POS highlighted here. Right above that line is a printer command. We see a printer command beginning with A. This is a command that tells the printer it is about to receive some text. And then we see the parameters to be included with that text. So we have the A for text. We have the first parameter. That the first number field after the A is a parameter that gives us the x-axis of this data field. It's giving us it's a coordinate. We have the x and y coordinates that are measured in dots. Again, this is a form that uses the EPL2 programming language. So this is exactly what I'm looking at here, is the EPL2 command to print some text. We have the A, the coordinates. The third parameter is a rotation, if we want to rotate it 90 degrees, 180, etc. Fourth parameter is a font selection, where we have the ability to specify a font size. The fifth parameter is a multiplier to expand the size of that font horizontally. And then we have a vertical multiplier. And then we have a final parameter here that references the print type, whether it's normal or reversed, as in normal print, black print on white background, or reversed would be a white print on a black background. Followed by a quote. We can see here that each command is structured in a very specific manner. Okay, we start a command and enter our parameters, and in that command, after we have assigned all of the necessary parameters, we begin with we apply an open quote. This is where we're going to include the data to be printed by this command. Right down on our next line, what do we have? Keystroke POS. All that is in the field text is the actual text to be printed. So we begin with the text command, followed by the text itself, ending with a quote to close that text, so to speak, followed by the number 10 in braces. A digit within braces symbolizes to Keystroke an ASCII command. Okay, this is, or just an ASCII code. ASCII code 10 is a line feed character, and that is ending our command. So here within 3 lines in our label editor, we have a completely self-contained command in the proprietary EPL2 programming language. So we begin with a command, we begin with we include the text, and we include what I guess we could call a footer. It ends the command. It is a line feed to end that command. Let's look at our next command that is also contained within 3 lines. This follows our format very similarly. We start with a text command, the letter A. We apply our coordinates. We apply additional parameters for font layout. You see, I'm not applying things like space before, or width, or alignment, or decimal points, or flags, or print codes. These are all essentially keystroke commands. We're not going to send any keystroke commands to this printer. We're sending only the printer commands to it. So again, we have our text command. Our next line is a little different here. Where in the previous command we used actual text. We used keystroke POS. We could have Bob's store as the text there. Here in this next command, we're actually using a data field. Okay, so here on this next portion of the command, we're not actually including any field text. We're including a description field. This is telling Keystroke that instead of pulling actual text, instead of actually sending actual text to the file or to the printer, we're going to send data from a keystroke record to the printer. In this case, it's the inventory. It's an inventory field, and it is the description. So here we have our text command identifying how we want to lay out this text. We have the actual data to be included, a data field, the description, and we end it. We close that data field with a quote and finish the command with a line feed character. So again, we see that this pattern repeats itself throughout the form. We're going to go to another command here, and here we see that this command is beginning with a B. B fairly is probably pretty self-evident. It's a barcode field. So yet again, we're sending a command to the printer that says, get ready to print a barcode. Here are the coordinates. Here are all the variables to be used. And we can assign, with proprietary languages, we can assign parameters such as the barcode selection for the symbology, whether it's code 128 or code 39, etc. We have parameters for the barcode width and so on. So all we're doing here is setting up the printer to print a barcode field, and we put in the parameters that are basically in agreement with the programming language. No other special commands in here. No keystroke commands such as the space before, the width, etc. And as we go down, again, we begin, in that command, we include the open quote, so we can specify what data is about to be barcoded. And then on our next line, here we have our data. It's not a fixed text. It is not a static text. It is, again, a data field. It is the product code retrieved from the inventory record. So we're telling Keystroke, let's pull that product code and let's make it the barcode. Yet again, we end that command by closing the data with a close quote and terminating the command with a line feed, an ASCII character 10. And so that is just our basic structure of a proprietary programming language, and they differ from one to the next. I'm going to take you a little bit further and show what this would actually produce. All right, for our purposes of demonstration here, we're actually going to print to a file, and as a great troubleshooting tip, printing to a file can be immensely helpful when we're using specialty printers with proprietary programming languages. It gives us a real nice way to see precisely what's being sent to the printer. Let's go ahead and We'll call this export.txt. We're going to print to a file and call it export.txt. I'm content with that for our purposes here. I'm going to configure our labels to print an individual price tag. We're not going to print off a long list of items, so I'll just select a few items for our purposes. We're going to do one label per item here. I'll select OK, and I will select our 11-inch writing tablet. That item just got printed to a file. Printed one label to a file. Go down, 207 Chard, 2007 Chardonnay, 2008 Merlot. I've just sent those 3 items to the export.txt file. I'm done printing labels for now. Complete. Just pull up command prompt, easy way to get there. We know that export.txt is going right to the keystroke directory. That's where I'm going to find it. I'm going to use Notepad to find export or pull up export.txt. Let me switch over to that Notepad. Okay, so here we are. We are viewing that output. This doesn't look like a label in any sense whatsoever. We have sent all the commands that would be sent to the printer to a file, and we can examine exactly what's being sent to what would be sent to the printer. So here I see the commands. We start with our commands that set variables like the width and height and distance between labels. We see it in our first text command. This is the same text that we had entered in keystroke. Here's the value within quotes, and moving right along to our next command, we see the description of the item. Here we see the B command for our barcode, and of course a text editor will not generate a barcode for us, but we see the value that is being sent to the printer to be barcoded within quotes here. This is very useful, again, like I said, for troubleshooting purposes, because we get a clear vision of what is being sent to that printer, the actual commands. Sometimes this isn't enough for us to go on. Sometimes if we're working with a Zebra printer and we believe we've got everything right in our commands and it's still not printing properly, well, we can print our label to a file, see exactly what's being sent to that printer, and I'll call up Zebra, get a technician on the phone. We'll review the exact commands being sent to the printer. In some cases, they'll find issues where, oh, this command needs to be adjusted. The version of the printer that you're using is using firmware that requires a different command for this type of function, etc. Anything like that. This is useful because we've got tangible evidence in hand of exactly what we're trying to do here. So, great troubleshooting tip there. We can always print our custom labels to a file. Let's go back into keystroke here. All right. I think that's a pretty good overview of a custom label file for the EPL2 programming language. Again, there are multiple varieties of specialty printers that use their own proprietary languages. Another one that we've worked with pretty closely lately have been Godex printers. So I'd also like to take a moment to look at some of the Godex commands. And I have a very simple Godex, again, and right in my forms list, I can see that anything with a Godex, obviously self-explanatory, works with a Godex printer. We'll F3 on that to edit that. Here we see again, proprietary commands, not completely dissimilar the EPL2 programming language, but there are differences. The EPL2 label will not necessarily print on or will simply not print on a printer that is not compatible with that programming language. This programming language is referred to as the EZPL language. This is a proprietary Godex printer language, but we do see it's somewhat similar. Again, here if we look at this group, our commands are essentially held within 3 lines, are all contained within 3 lines. We have the start of the command, where we apply what type of command it is, the parameters to be used, and the data to be included, whether it is actual text or a data field retrieved from Keystroke. And then in this case, we're ending with an ASCII character 13. 13, I believe, is a carriage return. So where a zebra printer takes a 10 at the end of the command, a line feed, Godex takes a 13, takes a carriage return at the end of each command. And again, as we move down, the pattern repeats. Each command is going to be contained within 3 lines. Now, as I mentioned at our start here, this is something that you need familiarity with. You need to have your EPL2 command reference handy. You need to refer to that to determine what parameters should be used for a data field, how to move data fields around on your label. And so again, it takes some expertise with the programming language. But on the other hand, some printer manufacturers will provide or make available editors, label editors that work in a WYSIWYG or what you see is what you get fashion, where you can lay out a label graphically. You put in whatever text you want on there, you size it in the editor, and then generally speaking, such an editor will have a means of displaying the actual printer commands to correspond with that visual layout that you have created. Now, I won't make any endorsements of one style of printer or one manufacturer over another. What I can say, though, is that in my experience, Godex provides a label editor with their printer that allows you as the dealer or even the user to edit a custom label, specify the size of their label stock, lay it out exactly as they want it to print. That editor can then show all of the commands needed to print that label, and it's quite literally as simple as cutting and pasting all of the commands from the label editor into Keystroke here. Again, it's my understanding that Godex, and it's been my experience that Godex provides a label with the printer. Zebra does have an editor as well. I believe that the Zebra editor is not included with the printers, though, so I think there's a slight difference there. If we've got an editor, well, that really makes it easy for us because you get to see exactly what that label is going to look like. Then all we have to do is copy those commands out of the label editor and put them right into Keystroke. So it's specialty label printing has really progressed in the past few years, and I think vendors or manufacturers have made it easier and made some of these specialty printers a lot friendlier and a lot easier to get really great results out of them. And you know, again, this is probably not hitting on too much brand new material for many of you folks. If many of you that have been working with Keystroke for a while, almost all have users that, at least some users, that are using a dedicated printer. And You probably created some label stock for them in the past. As I mentioned earlier, once you create a custom label for the customer and it suits their preferences, you might not touch it again for years. So, it's nice to refresh on this from time to time. Um, I think I've covered some of the basics here. I'm happy to take any questions that any of you may have, or see if there's anything I could cover in greater detail. We have you all okay. I see Nick is already unmuting for us here. Were there any questions regarding using specialty printers or editing label forms for specialty printers? Is there anything that I could clarify? All right, I'm not getting too much feedback yet, but I'd like to thank you all for joining us this morning. Any questions that do arise regarding custom labels and specialty printers, please feel free to give us a call at tech support, 800-275-4727. You all know the number, and we'll be happy to discuss this in further detail. We happen to have a few command references on hand in the office here. The command references for specialty printers are usually pretty easily found online, but we also keep some copies around for our own use as well. So again, I do want to thank everyone for joining us this morning, and remind everyone that Keystroke Live will be held each Wednesday, 10 a.m., and next week, we're going to continue on our editing streak, and we'll be reviewing editing report forms with Lynn Goosens.
Hey, Jay?
Yes?
I got one last question for you.
Sure.
This is President Joe from Onondaga Cash Web, sir.
Oh, hi, guys.
Hi. I had a question about printing like a one-by-one label where there's two side-by-side.
Yeah.
Getting that right column.
Oh, sure. We've got some standard forms in that in Keystroke that can do that. Let's take a look. Basically, again, what's that?
It was a Godex printer as well.
Oh, it was a Godex. Basically, I'm not sure that I have a standard Godex that prints two side by side, but the theory is all the same. Let's take a look at another specialty. It is essentially printing two labels, is all that's doing, and let's take a look at an Eltron 2 across, and again the same philosophy carries over. One across, oh, two across. Here we go. So here I'm going to go into Keystroke now. All right, and I have my list of form files. Here's a 2 across label, and if we look so far, we see nothing very special here. We see here's our first body command for the body of the label. We're starting with description. Look what we're doing in our very next command. We are using completely different coordinates. Okay, we're duplicating the label is all that we're doing here. We start with our first command that's going to print a description. We start with our text command and our coordinates. Prints the description. Ends that command. Very next command, it's also a text command. Look at the difference in coordinates. It's over a 200-point difference. One detail I'll mention here is that where I refer to a finer degree of control, when we use standard labels for Windows desktop printers, we're managing that label in spaces, in character spaces, in line spaces. Here with specialty printers, we're managing that label using dots per inch. Typically, most specialty printers are commonly going to be at a default setting of 200 or 203 dots per inch. So we're looking at a 200-point difference. It's about a 1-inch difference between these labels here. All we're doing when we're doing a 2 across label, I am actually putting a width in here. I'm doing a number across, and I'm not even entirely certain that the printer uses this command. I believe that we use this simply as for our own reference here. But what we do, again, is we are just duplicating that label. Where we have 2 across, we're printing the first field. Then we duplicate it across at new coordinates. Let's go down to the very next command. It's a barcode command, and it's going to barcode the product code. That's the end of that command. Let's start the next command. Same thing, virtually identical except for the coordinates. All we're doing is doubling up the label. We print everything twice.
You have to do the descriptor twice, and then you have to do the barcode twice.
That's right.
And you do the price twice.
That's right.
Okay.
Is it printing sequential items if I print it out? In other words, is it copying the label from the left onto the right, or is it printing?
No, it's printing label 1, label 2, label 3, label 4. So
okay.
one label 1. What's that?
I saw some width characters in there, like 15.
Right. I do believe that some of these are needed on the second instances, and that's on the first instance. I'll review that. That may even be just a holdover from when this label was created. Basically, when you add a field in Keystroke, in some cases, Keystroke populates these anyway. I am reasonably confident that that some of these can just simply be removed. So they're just like, and here we do see in some cases the alignment. We have left and right. Let me take a look at that here, because this is one of those commands: print on label 1, print on label 2. All right, this is one of the commands that is actually needed here. I believe we can get away with the width. I'd have to do a test with an actual label on an actual Zebra printer, but that is one way to differentiate. And again, I think in some cases, some of the information on these labels is only used as our reference. But generally speaking, we're not going to need to include anything. We just really need to just print duplicate instances of the same data.
Is there anything on there that controls like the truncating of, let's say, a really long descriptor so that it doesn't overlap onto the second label?
Boy, that's a good one. In Keystroke, in a standard Windows desktop printer label, obviously the width field would control that. That may possibly be, again, I'd need to do some testing. That may very well be the idea behind one of these 2 across, is that we see that there is a width assigned to these descriptions here. I think that may be a method of forcing that. Again, it's something that I approach on a case-by-case basis, but I will definitely find a method of doing that. But you know, the more I think about it now, the more width would make sense, is that we put a definitive width in there, a keystroke width that says, hey, no more than this, no more than this much space. And this, again, this 15, that's a width that doesn't mean anything to the printer but only has a meaning to keystroke. 15 in terms of keystroke represents a number of characters. By default, I believe it is 10 characters per inch. So this is saying that essentially a width of 15 is no greater than 1.5 inches. So that could very reasonably be, in this example, why we would use the width to set a very determinate keystroke width.
Okay.
That's very helpful. Thank you.
No problem. Did anybody else have any further questions? I know this can be an awful lot to absorb. Again, I didn't want to get in too great of a detail and go through all of these commands in that great a depth. It's just difficult to try and absorb all that, especially when you can always just turn to a command reference. But I do want you all to have a good foundation of label editing. And as I said, any of you that do have additional questions, feel free to give us a call at tech support, and we're happy to offer whatever guidance we can.
Thank you, Jay.
Thank you all for joining us this morning.
Great presentation, Jay.
And thanks, Nick.
Thank you.
All right, everyone have a great day. Call with any questions.